Spider-Man is a timeless hero, one whose central motivation of with great power comes great responsibility and relatable burden of balancing everyday worries with incredible adventures has spoken to people of all ages from his debut in 1962 until today. But the many versions of the hero and his decades of complex mythology found a uniquely thrilling synthesis and interpretation in what may be the character's greatest version outside of comic books. The all-too-short-lived animated series, The Spectacular Spider-Man. Originally airing from 2008 to 2009 for 2 seasons and a total of 26 episodes, the Spectacular Spider-Man television series' end was the result of Disney's purchase of Marvel Comics at the end of 2009. But with characterization true to the spirit of the comics, intelligent storytelling, and fantastic action, this is quite simply one of the greatest interpretations of everyone's favorite wall-crawling superhero. The Spectacular Spider-Man is the type of series that proves both the power of the central character and the unique strengths of animated storytelling in the realm of superheroes. Created by Greg Weisman and Victor Cook, The Spectacular Spider-Man is a series that truly understood what is special about the wall-crawler and his world. As a whole, the show draws its primary influences from the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man comics, which introduced the hero and focused heavily on his time as a high schooler balancing school life, relationships, and heroism, while influencing that with a modern storytelling sensibility and various characters cherry-picked from the hero's decades of stories. Here, there is a wide-eyed sense of discovery that blends with the burden of responsibility to create a Peter Parker that evokes what has been loved about the character for more than 50 years. Voiced here by Josh Keaton, Peter really feels like he has jumped off the comic page and come to life in animated form. He has all of his strengths and weaknesses, charisma and depth that make him an endearing character to all manner of viewers. Peter must not only face the challenges presented by his iconic villains, but also grow through increasingly complex relationships with the closest people in his life. Namely, his protective Aunt May, the dual love interests of Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane Watson, close but increasingly unhinged friend Harry Osborn, and the many more characters that comprise both Midtown High and the Daily Bugle. The lessons learned by Peter as a teenager maturing through his many challenges are in service of the show's larger theme of the education of Peter Parker, as revealed by Weisman. This is seen in how each of the series' arcs are named after a study course, such as Biology 101, Psychology 101, and Criminology 101. These names also reflect the literal and figurative contents of the episodes they encapsulate, such as the Chemistry 101 arc dealing with both the unintentional effects of the Goblin Serum on the mind of Harry and the blossoming romance of Peter and Mary Jane. The blending of themes with narrative content is a major element behind the show's consistently satisfying character arcs, which provide heft to the superhero battles of each episode. While the series tracks the early days of the hero, it doesn't waste precious time redoing an origin that everyone knows by heart already, although it is touched on in a flashback near the end of Season 1. Instead, the series leaps into action with Peter already patrolling New York as Spider-Man, and then introduces his villains one by one, even bringing some into the series long before they become superpowered, in order to give them larger arcs and more fleshed-out personalities.
Gwen, this is ESU's resident genius, my husband, Kurt.
It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Connors.
Every villain and supporting character that longtime fans love is here, but despite that vast supporting cast, the Spectacular Spider-Man knows how to balance its focus for character-centric storytelling and variety in narrative focus. Everything from the Sinister Six melee in group therapy to the prison break of opening night is meant to move Peter's relationships and level of maturity forward. The lasting appeal of Spider-Man is based upon the character's relatability and inspirational qualities. Peter Parker has ups and downs in his personal, professional, and superhero lives, with many of his struggles based in the same issues that affect his viewers or readers, just exaggerated to an operatic scale that comes with comics. But while Peter must face hard decisions regarding love, money, respect, and family, he's also an innately good person, using his gifts to make the world a better place and living out the mantra that his late Uncle Ben taught him.
With great power, there must also come great responsibility.
In addition, The choice to provide Peter with an inner monologue via voiceover helps bring the audience into the mind of the hero, just like the comic books, so as to better understand Peter and his frequently fraught personal dilemmas.
Oh, today's been one-stop shopping for disappointment. No money at home, no cool at school. I nearly pavement splat fighting a wacko with wings. And now Daily Bugle security won't even let me use the elevator.
There are numerous touchstones from decades of comics sprinkled throughout the series, with elements such as Peter's love interests reflecting his numerous comic book romances, to the signature spider emblem sign-off being a direct callback to the early years of the character. These underline the show's love of the original Stan Lee and Steve Ditko stories, and their focus on telling a narrative whose complexities come in the form of real-world messy relationships, rather than decades of convoluted mythology. That messiness comes from the team behind the series not only crafting compelling stories in both the superheroic and everyday sides of Peter's life, but combining them to tell a cohesive narrative that excites and even frustrates in the best ways. Just like in the comics, as soon as Peter starts to get ahead in life, something comes along to knock him back down. As a result, this likely is the most complete interpretation of Spidey ever put on screen, thanks to the amount of time allowed to build up the character. Also, characters like Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn are given depth and plenty of screen time to shine, with Gwen in particular being changed to more of a nerd than her comic counterpart, in an effort to give Peter a similar love interest that contrasts nicely against the more wild and glamorous Mary Jane. The push and pull between the two young women, who thankfully are given life and interests outside of Peter, brings the classic comic book love triangle to life with some welcome modern updates. Using a flatter and somewhat angular art style for the series, the spectacular Spider-Man has a more youthful look to it that may sit strangely at first for viewers not accustomed to the aesthetic choice. But this not only helps to differentiate the series from any other, but also highlights the heightened and comic book-inspired nature of the show. At first glance, the big eyes and simple wardrobes may feel more like a style you'd see in a show aimed at toddlers rather than all ages. But given enough time to see it in action, we can see that Weisman and Cook's art direction is a modern-day interpretation of Ditko's original creations. The use of bright colors and more cartoonish features for characters helps images pop off the screen for greater clarity in the hyperkinetic and suitably fast-paced action on display. These awesome fight scenes fill the series from start to finish, with Spidey's iconic wit, speed, and strength seen during his numerous battles. Among the many throughout the series, Spider-Man's fights with the Sinister Six and a four-way battle with Doc Ock, Tombstone, and Silvermane are true highlights, each with their own unique styles and stakes. The Spectacular Spider-Man is structured into 3-episode-long story arcs that make up a larger season-long narrative. While each individual episode comprises a satisfying story on its own, the trifecta of episodes combine into a stronger cohesive whole, complete with its own themes and effects on characters. As the villains and challenges pile up, Spider-Man must grow and learn to balance each aspect of his life. But there are enough tweaks to the formula to keep surprising audiences by pushing storylines in often surprising directions that somewhat undermine expectations while still being rewarding. Some villain identities are changed, Peter's relationships take new turns, and old characters bounce off one another in new ways to keep the narrative consistently fresh.
Spider-Man, meet Walter Hardy, a.k.a. the Cat Burglar.
That face. Black Cat's father murdered Uncle Ben.
With a first season that focuses on the rise of Spider-Man's supervillains, their formation of the Sinister Six, and the arrival of Venom, a wide variety of long-loved Spider-Man stories from across the decades are explored almost immediately. If there is a weak point within the show, it is found in its depiction of Venom. Not in Eddie Brock's motivations, nor the stories that surround him, but in the aesthetics of the monstrous villain himself. Most likely a byproduct of the series' animation style, which works wonderfully for most characters throughout. Venom lacks the creepiness and menace of his depictions within comic books, films, and other TV series. Here, he's a bulky, matte black, toothy version of Spider-Man, which just doesn't quite work when making the villain into a legitimate threat. Perhaps it's because Venom is a decidedly 90s-style character jammed into a series that finds its tone and style roots in the 60s and 70s. When reworked to fit the larger aesthetics, the villain loses his original appeal without gaining something new. But beyond that, the Venom storyline as an actual narrative works fairly well, especially during Spider-Man's time wearing the increasingly dangerous symbiote costume. That balance between classic and modern is the key to Spectacular Spider-Man's success, as the blend between the two creates a more timeless feel that isn't anchored to a specific moment in time. Weisman and Cook's series feels like it could take place in any decade, and with morals and central ideas that can feel relatable no matter the era it is viewed in. That's why the series continues to be adored, and why superhero stories in general have remained popular for so long. Simply put, Spectacular Spider-Man is constantly working to stay true to its hero and his world. That becomes especially highlighted when contrasted against the 1990s Spider-Man the Animated Series, and its reliance on melodrama to counteract underwhelming action.
Hey, this isn't about your career. This is about you not wanting to get close.
The 1999 Spider-Man Unlimited, a hot mess substituting half-cocked sci-fi for real ideas. 2003's Spider-Man the New Animated Series, which attempted to quickly cash in on newfound interest from the live-action film series, and the 2012 Ultimate Spider-Man, a truly for-kids adaptation that engendered no end of ill will by unceremoniously replacing Spectacular Spider-Man.
This clown ruined my Uncle Ben's birthday before. Some might even say my terrible takedown of him is what got me sent to S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy in the first place.
In its second season, Spectacular plays with its formula more and more, resulting in episodes like Growing Pains, which juxtaposes Shakespearean recitals whose content and soliloquies reflect the main storyline of Venom's return.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
It's these choices that elevated the series from being a faithful cartoon retelling of Spider-Man's story to a unique and risky series that only became more mature and complex over the course of its production. By taking chances, the series added on new layers that only enhanced its classic approach to superhero adventures. It's the type of smart storytelling and commitment to a style that helped to define the best animated comic book television shows, like Batman the Animated Series and much of the DC animated universe, as must-see fare for comic book fans. So it's a shame that the series abruptly ended when it did, as there was still so much strong material to explore, with Weisman stating that he had planned for the show to reach at least 65 episodes. Should it have continued, characters like Carnage, Hobgoblin, and Scorpion would have soon made their first appearance, and fans would have not been left with an agonizing cliffhanger ending. But the frustration over what could have been is well worth the joy the series continues to bring. From its hero, to its villains, to its theme song, and so much more, the Spectacular Spider-Man defined itself over a relatively short run as the quintessential show for any fan of the character.